Thanks for being so accommodating while we try to figure out how to still be able to have classes together. Today's class will be a 60-minute Yin Yoga practice that's going to be all about the legs. So if we think about the upper legs, we have our quadriceps, we have the outer lines of the legs where the IT band runs, and we've got the inner lines of the legs that help to draw the legs together or away from one another, and we have the back line of the legs. So this practice is really aiming to lengthen out that fascia that surrounds the muscles and helps to support us in movement, just to aim for a bit better mobility for our legs. I know that I've been doing this really drastic range of either sitting a lot or moving a lot, and so my body has just definitely been feeling that. So I hope that you get some relief through the legs as well as the spine. So let's start in a meditation, and you can do this seated or lying down, but we'll only be here for about 3 minutes. I should mention that you should have either a couple of yoga blocks, either pots and pans, or some thicker books, and I'm just using a regular old bath towel to help elevate the hips. So decide in this moment if it would feel best for you to have the eyes closed or open, whatever feels most comfortable. If the eyes are open, just find a softer gaze down in front of you. And start to encourage an effortlessness, a sense of ease for your practice today. Life can already be challenging enough, so try not to let your yoga practice contribute to that challenge. Just settle into a rhythm of breath that feels natural. And this might be more controlled, or it just might be the cadence of your breath in this moment. Keeping it simple in our practice today, and just noticing how you feel in this moment, if there's spots of achiness that are starting to arise, or periods of tension within the body, or perhaps you feel at ease. You might feel particularly energetic in this moment. But ultimately, we're aiming in our Yin Yoga practice to bring a balance and a harmony to the energy of our body and our mind. So with this concept of effortlessness and balance, how might you adapt your practice to help support that, to help cultivate that? And if there are any other intentions that you would like to set for your practice, then please do so now. Asking your heart, what brought you to your practice today? And then blinking the eyes a few times, shifting from your meditation, taking in the space that you're practicing in. Okay, so we'll start with a posture called butterfly. And the intention of this pose is to get into the inner lines of the legs and part of the spine as well. So we'll create a diamond shape with the legs. I have my hips slightly elevated here too, so you might find that that works for your body or that it doesn't really do anything at all. And with this intention of targeting the inner thighs, anytime that we're working within the hips, if you feel discomfort in your knees, back out of the pose, shift and realign your body. So you might bring your heels further away from your body. You could also support underneath the knees with some blocks as well, or any of the props that you have nearby. In this diamond shape, slowly start to encourage the pelvis to tilt forward. And then if it feels okay to round into the spine, let it slowly drape towards the soles of the feet. And lastly, very gradually start to lower the head as well. So if you find that as you settle into this posture, there's a lot of resistance felt within the back chain of the body, simply just lift up a little bit higher or keep the spine in a more neutral position and just very gradually start to ease your way into the pose. So in our Yin Yoga practice, this is meant to be complementary to any other physical practice where you're actively engaging with the muscles and strengthening them. And this helps to provide a release for our fascia tissues, the ligaments, the tendons, and the joints of the body, something that we don't often get to specifically target. So as we move through our practice, just keep in mind that your body may not look like mine as I practice along with you. And this is just all due to skeletal variability, shapes of our bones, and where we hold tension. And the approach to this practice, how we practice, is we bring our body into a general shape, and then we pause when we feel this first edge of resistance. Settling and softening the muscles where we feel sensation so that this force that we're applying can transfer to those yin-like tissues that I had mentioned, the fascia, the thicker bands of tendons and ligaments, and then getting into the joint capsules as well. And so we hold postures in Yin Yoga anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. So this is just encouraging these tissues to strengthen themselves. So we're increasing their endurance. And you may find that the set times that I'll be guiding you through may not feel right within your body. So if you start to feel anything that's over a mild to moderate sensation as you pause here, just be sure to either back out of the pose a bit until you find a milder edge, or to move out of it completely. So though we're holding in relative stillness, please note that again, that you're not fixed here for that whole amount of time, that you'll find multiple edges within each of the poses. Again, sensation should be no more than mild to moderate. You might feel a little bit bitter over time. So we'll start to slowly ease our way out of this butterfly pose, bringing the spine to upright, and you might sense a bit of fragility or tenderness, perhaps within the spine, the lower back, within the inner thighs. Lean a bit back in space. Start to slowly draw the knees to point up towards the ceiling with the feet on the floor, and just gently windshield wiper the legs from side to side a few times. And you might start to observe that those areas that we've just targeted, sensation then begins to kind of dissolve away. It might linger for a little bit, but it doesn't feel as intense as when we were in the posture. So we'll continue to work within the inner lines of the legs, coming into dragonfly. So still in this seated position, take the legs out as wide as feels comfortable, just to a point where they stop moving. And as you sit here, just notice what you feel within the inner lines of the legs. You might feel a tugging sensation on the inner line of the knee or along the back line of the leg. And you're welcome to stay more upright here if that's what you're feeling. You might notice that the toes just naturally fall back behind you, or they might be pointing more up towards the sky. And then I'll slowly bring the body forward if that feels like it is suitable. Again, we're just trying to find that first edge of resistance. So don't worry about how close you are to the ground. That's not the purpose of this practice. If you find that you're starting to grip in the muscles and you're really trying to force yourself into the shape, then that's defeating the purpose of this practice. So just softening the muscles of the legs in through the spine, and really encourage this effortlessness by letting gravity do the work, the weight of our bones starting to settle down towards the ground. So you might be feeling this closer up to where the hamstring inserts, up by the glutes. And perhaps there's still a lot of resistance being felt within the shoulders, up through the neck, a lot of achiness here, in which case you could start to strategically use your props to hold the body in its shape so that you can encourage this ease. So I'm just creating a little tower here for my forearms to rest as I ease into my upper spine. And so we'll be holding this pose for longer than we did with our butterfly, and this will give us the opportunity to really pay attention. What do we feel within this pose, and how does sensation change with time? And it can go a whole multitude of ways. We might find that sensation diminishes and our body just naturally starts to increase in the range of motion of the upper body moving down in space. You might feel a shift of the pelvis tilting a bit more forward. We might also find that as we settle in, sensation starts to build and it becomes too much. After we've either increased the range of motion or just through the hold of time. So again, encouraging that ease. How can we cultivate this sense of connection and support to our body by staying in that mild to moderate range? And how our body starts to respond, how our breath starts to respond, can really let us know that we might be too deep within a posture. If we find that there's clenching within the muscles, if the breath becomes really rapid, and those could all be signs that we're just too far within the pose. And also other physical sensations. If you notice numbness or tingling, if you feel any sharp sensations, Those two are signs that you shouldn't be within the pose. Back off, stay out of the posture completely, or adjust and realign before settling back in. I found one of the great benefits of this practice is how meditative that it can be. There might be moments where, say, I'm listening to a podcast or watching something, so I'm not quite as in tune to the meditative aspect, but we can just sit here and pause, and we might find ourselves pretty absorbed with sensation within the body. That could be our focus for our meditation. We might start to play with breath practice, pranayama, by breathing a little bit more deeply and noticing how that changes our experience. You might have a mantra that you're working with. So just giving yourself this time and opportunity, though it feels like we're not doing very much, the benefits afterwards can be quite profound. We'll be here for about 1 more minute. Alright, and then slowly, gradually start to lift up if you're folded forward. We were in this pose for quite a while, so really just being mindful with that kind attention of how it could be a little bit tender within the inner lines of the legs. So I'm just moving nice and slow, starting to notice where I feel those sensations, and just gently pulse through the knees a few times. You could even windshield wiper the legs from side to side. If you haven't practiced yin very frequently, it might feel foreign, some of the sensations within the body. So by staying on the milder end of sensation, you're allowing for these tissues to slowly and gradually start to stretch. And that's how they like to move. So if you find that outside of this practice, if you still feel lingering sensation the next day, kind of a soreness, just use that as a sign that you may have gone too deep within the posture. So we'll bring the spine into one more flexion pose, just being mindful that if there is still some achiness within the shoulders, the spine, the head, or the neck, just to not go quite so deep or ease into it. And we will start to come into caterpillar, and this is aiming to get more onto the back lines of the legs. You might feel this on the inner lines of, or the backs of the knees as well. Again, I'm still elevated on a prop here. So we're just slowly bringing the body forward. You could use a strap or a belt here, or if you're able to hold on to the feet, You could do so to help bring the upper body down so that you can feel more sensation on the backs of the legs if you're not feeling much here. But we're still trying to create and release through the muscles of the legs primarily. So there's a line of fascia that runs from the bottoms of our feet all the way up the back line of our body, through the backs of the legs, the back of the spine, all the way up to the crown of the head. But really, this line of fascia is interconnected in a whole multitude of ways. So though we may have an intended target area, it's not uncommon that we would feel it in other parts of the body. We'll be here for about 1 more minute. So as I had mentioned, the fascia is so interconnected and it surrounds each of the muscle fibers individually. So there is some component of the muscles getting worked a bit here. So by starting with a cooler body that allows for the muscles to be less a part of this factor. If the muscles were warm, they would have more elasticity. So oftentimes they encourage that you practice with the body a bit more cool, or before you were to do a more yang style workout. Okay, so we'll slowly start to lift the spine back upright. And then very gradually start to make your way to your hands and knees in a tabletop position. Let's move through just a few rounds of cat-cow. So arching the belly towards the floor as you inhale, lifting the gaze, and exhale to round through the spine. Just doing that a few times with the breath. And perhaps just starting to incorporate some spirals through the spine or some little C-shaped curves. Okay, so the next posture that we'll get into is called swan, and this is targeting the outer line of the hip, and we're going to start with the right leg. So just bringing your right leg, the shin, the foot forward. You might even have an angle so that that right knee is out to the side, but it could be more into the center line. And then you'll slide that left leg back a bit more. So we're going to come into our upright swan first by literally just sitting more upright. So I tend to lean into my hip side. I just find that that works for me best to access sensation, but you could certainly prop underneath that outer right hip, and you might find that that helps to access a bit more for you. If you start to feel any discomfort within the knee, you could certainly come onto your back and take a figure 4, crossing the right ankle over the left thigh and just hugging left thigh in towards the body. So as I lean onto this right hip side, my left knee is bent and pointing out towards the left side. So you might feel this a bit like a mild back bend, some compression into the low back. You could also feel some sensation across the top of the left thigh. About 30 more seconds in this variation of full swan. I'm just going through that checklist. Am I relaxing into the muscles? What is that edge of sensation that I feel? If I were to place it on a scale, ideally we would want it to fall between a 2 and a 5, if that was on a scale from 0 to 10. 0 being no sensation, 10 being intense pain. And so we all have different levels of sensation that we can linger and hold in. Okay, then we'll bring this into our sleeping swan. So folding the upper body forward, you might use those blocks or props around you to support the forearms. The arms might be pretty straight here though. And so by pausing in each pose, we can manipulate the breath perhaps to foster our awareness of sensation in the body, or even start to feel this energy moving through our body. We might feel it more when we release from a posture. Researchers and those that practice traditional Chinese medicine believe that our organs, our joints are all realms where energy passes through. Each has its own energetic qualities and feelings associated with them. Okay, so from here we'll slowly start to lift up from our sleeping swan, and we're going to shift onto this right hip side and start to swing the left leg around. If you were in that figure 4, just rising up to seated. So we'll come into a pose called shoelace or square. You might simply just cross your left shin in front of the right. You might keep a distance between the knees here, coming more into a square pose, or you might come into any variation of, say, a shoelace where the thighs start to move closer towards one another, still aiming to get into those outer bands and lines of the legs. So as you settle into this posture, notice what the level of sensation is. It might be just right as you stay in the seated position. You could also explore folding forward. Sometimes bringing the body forward allows us to work around some of those moments where we feel compression within the legs, or those sticky spots where we feel like we can't move any further. So you might find that you're able to access a more suitable edge of sensation, or just feel less of that compressive force, say at the hip crease. Less than a minute here. So as we move further along in our practice, I'll just start to talk less and less. I find a lot of value in opportunity of just sitting in quietude, and this might not necessarily mean that the space that you're practicing in is quiet, but ourselves are fairly introspective. We certainly might be listening to the sounds within our practice space, or the mind might still be active, but there is a level of awareness and concentration that is still occurring. So we're aware of the thought process, we're aware of whatever starts to arise from moment to moment. Let's start to slowly release. Very gradually uncrossing the legs. And that option to either windshield wiper the legs from side to side or straighten them out in front of you and just pulse through the knees. Whatever feels like a suitable release for you. Okay, so we'll start to shift over to our swan on the other side, and you could try approaching it from the seated position, and then you'll kind of know which way you prefer to do so. So we'll start with our left leg this time. That thigh is out in front of you in the shin, and then you'll lean into that left hip side and send the right leg back behind you. So just shift and adjust. Just aware of how it can feel so different from side to side. So we just have natural asymmetries within our skeletal structure, as I had mentioned before. And when we come into these asymmetrical postures, it really lets us know where we feel that asymmetry in the body. This posture feels different on this side, or it requires a different alignment. If there's discomfort on that back knee, you could certainly pat it with that towel or blanket that you have as well. So just pausing in this more upright swan variation. So this concept of just an effortlessness in our practice, in our meditation, it's encouraging this cultivation of ease. So that when we do notice when stronger emotions or sensation arise in the body, we can then respond a bit more skillfully. We might question, well, why is this arising? How can I meet it with compassion? Do I need to shift something in my body? Can I investigate this thought that's coming up in my mind? Right, let's slowly shift towards our sleeping swan, lowering the upper body down any amount towards the floor with that intention of still targeting the outer line of that left hip. Just aware of where else you feel this in the body. The eyes might be closed while you're practicing. You might have some music playing. And perhaps you have to pause and shoo away a family member or a pet. And that's okay too. Part of the challenge of practicing at home. And there's something really nice about it too. Our family, our pets, our loved ones get to witness us in our practice. And just a few more breaths here. So lifting out of our sleeping swan, leaning onto that left hip side and swinging the right leg out in front, and then setting up the legs here to target the outer hips more, either with this cross-legged variation, the right shin in front of the left, or a stack of the shins. When there is moments where that right knee is up a lot higher, you could always bridge the gap or just adjust so that you really feel more ease within the movement of the thighs within the hip socket. And then as you settle in here, you might start to forward fold. So I found this style of meditation where I just observe each unfolding moment. It's really been this opportunity to start to observe these patterns that have shown up within my life. which are good and some which really haven't served me very well. And it's been this opportunity to have this just really gentle, patient resolve to observe when these patterns start to show up off of the mat. And how can I start to take those steps, moving with these yin qualities, this kindness and this compassion, and this practice has really helped me to sit with those moments. And then there's just been that added benefit that I've had an increase within my range of motion. And that there just is this feeling of relief. When I have those moments of a really stressful day, I'll do a yin practice. And that really has helped a lot. Okay, so let's start to release from the seated posture. Uncrossing the legs, windshield wipering the legs a few times, or just straightening them out in front of you. Just a little counter pose. Okay, so we'll start to get further into the tops of the legs. Moving into a posture called saddle, and I'll provide a different variation if this doesn't work for your body. So we'll start by sitting back on the heels. So you might stay with the feet tucked underneath the glutes. I've seen my teacher practice that way, and he essentially will take his knees out a little bit wider and keep leaning back a bit in space. So we're aiming to get the whole front line of the body, and depending on how low to the ground you get, you might be able to get into a bit of a back bend as well. So another option is to take the feet out wider so that they're on the outer sides of the hips, and you could sit up onto a prop if your glutes don't touch the ground completely. And then you could explore leaning back in space. You might feel this as a tugging on the outside lines of the knees as well. If the glutes can touch the floor completely, you could stay there and start to recline back, elbows onto props or the floor, or perhaps fully recline back. If you find that any of those variations just really don't work for you, you can come into a pose called pontoon, where you're on the back, elevate the hips with a prop, the legs come to any amount of straight. So we're still getting the front of the legs up through the front of the body. So find what will work for you, and then I'll start the timer. We'll be here for about 3 minutes. In my saddle variation, I also like to prop underneath my shoulders and my head. I just find that that's the just right amount for me. So I will start to talk less and less, but I just wanted to mention that there really is this really deep connection of the experiences that we have in life and how that starts to get recorded within the body. Not just memories, but a more physical response to things as well. And this can have a whole range of emotions being held within the body. Happiness, sadness, anger, being frightened. And so sometimes as we access these lodged memories and sensations within the fascial patterns, those can start to arise. In which case we really have that choice. Well, how can I respond to this? How can I still cultivate this ease amidst whatever is arising? So I hope that I don't sound like it's all doom and gloom all the time. I mean, if you are feeling joy or elation, let that happen. But some of the Buddhist philosophy really resonates with me because there are moments in life where it is really challenging. Kind of this concept of suffering. And much of the suffering that starts to arise, some of it is really put on by ourselves. You know, when we're ruminating with something. Maybe you're thinking, gosh, it's gotta have been at 3 minutes by now. When is she gonna guide us out of the pose? Okay, so we'll slowly start to release from this posture. Easing up towards seated, gently untucking those legs. And we'll release down onto our back. The last few poses that we'll be taking will be on our backs. So enjoy this moment of release from that saddle pose. Straightening the legs out. A bit of a shavasana-like posture here. Just let the body take up space. Feel that release from low back through the front of the hips. Okay, so from here we'll get the whole outer line of the body coming into a posture called Banana Asana. And we're just aiming to create a crescent shape with the body. And the hips will stay connected to the floor. So imagine that they're glued in their spot. You'll pick up your left leg, slide it over to the left, slide the right leg over to meet that left leg. And if you find that that leg wants to kind of slide away from the body, you could hook either the inside leg or the outside leg together. Then you'll press into the backs of the arms and just kind of shimmy the shoulders and the head over to the left as well. And then lastly, you might start to reach the arms up and overhead. If they don't rest comfortably overhead, take them kind of out wider and say a V shape or a cactus shape. You could also use props underneath one or both of the forearms, elbows, or shoulders. So our nerves, our lymphatic system, is interwoven within our fascial system. So some postures can cause nerve entrapment. I find that happens a lot within this pose in the shoulder region. So if you find one of your arms starts to fall asleep or both, just release that arm at a different angle or just down by your side. left here. Okay, slowly start to release, arms by your side. Shift the shoulders and the head back so they're in line with the hips. Slide the legs through center and just hug the knees into the chest. Might feel nice to draw some circles in the air with the knees or sway a little from side to side. We'll take our banana to the other side. Hips again fixed on the floor. Slide the legs over towards the right. And then just shift the shoulders, the head over to the right as well. Lastly, lifting those arms up and overhead. You might hold on to opposite wrists, forearms. Settling in. Letting the ground hold you here. About a minute left here. the chest. Swaying or drawing circles in the air. And we'll just close with a really brief twist. Left leg down onto the floor, hugging right knee into the chest, and then draw that right knee up and over to the left. You might support underneath the shin or the foot, or hug on with the left hand onto the outer right thigh. Just a few more breaths here. And then slowly unwind. Give that right knee just a squeeze before releasing it to the floor. And then hug your left knee in towards your chest. And guide it up and across the body over to the right. And slowly start to unwind. Hug the knee into your chest. And then release onto the floor in your Shavasana. Let the body take up space. If you have more time in your day to have a longer Shavasana, then take that extra time. Otherwise, it's been an hour now, so take a few deep breaths, stretch out long on the mat, gather the knees into the chest after circling through wrists and ankles and wiggling fingers and toes. Pausing for just a moment on your side. And just reflecting upon any insight that was gained within your practice. And how could this intention of just cultivating an effortlessness, inviting ease for the rest of your day, how might that look? How might it be incorporated? Through a response, through letting go, through moving from that space of the compassionate heart. And rising back up to a seated position, bringing hands to prayer in front of the heart, and just bowing chin to chest. May this peace, this effortlessness that we so patiently cultivate within our practice, may it extend to ourselves, to those around us. Thank you so much for your time and for your practice. Please feel free to email me if you have questions or comments. Thank you so much. Namaste.